Hi, Greg here with Bright Idea Music. This tutorial is going to show you everything you need to know about 7th chords, what they are, how to build them. In a nutshell, 7th chords are extended chords, but they're so common that they're not even thought of as extended chords anymore. Most popular music written in the last 80 years or so have 7th chords in them. 7th chords have a 7th in them, and that just simply means that the 7th tone of the key is added to a major or minor triad. 7ths are also known as color tones. They're not the only color tones, and to make things a little more confusing, there are actually two different kinds of 7ths. But we're going to clear things up for you so you won't be confused and you'll make 7th chords your friend. Real quick, before we go any farther, do you know your major and minor triads? If not, this tutorial won't make sense. So here's two very clear tutorials on the screen if you don't know them. The first kind of 7th chord we're going to look at is the dominant 7th chord. A dominant 7th is also known as a flat 7th. This means that the tone itself is not a member of the key you're building the chord off of. If you count the 7 notes of a major key, the 7th note is flatted to get the dominant 7th. For example, a B is the 7th tone in the key of C, but the dominant 7th of the C chord is B flat. The easiest way to create a dominant 7th chord is just to add the note that is a whole step below the root of a major or minor triad. For example, if you want to play a C dominant 7th chord, find the C major chord and then look a whole step below the C. A whole step is the distance of two keys, black or white. In this case, you'll land on B flat. That's the dominant 7th of C. I'm going to play the C7 chord in the left hand just to show you its most basic position. Now, since there's a lot of B flats on the keyboard, it's not often played this way because this is what's called root position, and it's more specifically referred to as a closed voicing. Chords don't sound good when you play them this way because they have a clunky closed-off sound because the tones are very close together. It's when you play them like this that they really open up and the notes in the chord are free to breathe, as I like to say. As a matter of fact, this is actually known as an open voicing. But getting back to the dominant 7th chord, let's choose D7. Find your D triad, and your dominant 7th is a whole step below that. Moving down a half step to C sharp, and then another half step to C makes a whole step. So C is the dominant 7th of D. What about B flat? What's the dominant 7th of B flat? You got it right, A flat. For A, the dominant 7th is G. For G, it's F. For F sharp, it's E. I think you get the idea. If you need to add the dominant 7th to a minor chord, you just simply play a minor chord and add the dominant 7th, like D minor 7, A minor 7, etc. The character of a dominant 7th chord is a bluesy, dissonant sound. That's actually how these chords became popular in blues music. The question you might be asking is, do I have to memorize all of the dominant 7th chords? Well, it's more useful to know where the dominant 7th is in the context of the chord you're building. All you need to know is that the dominant 7th is a whole step below the root, and you're free to voice the chord by playing that dominant 7th anywhere on the keyboard that you think it sounds good. That's all you need to know to build a dominant 7th chord. Once you have more experience playing these chords in the context of songs, you'll be able to visualize a 7th chord even when you're not in front of the keyboard. And one more thing about dominant 7th chords. They're not referred to as dominant 7th chords unless someone's explaining them to you like I am today. Musicians usually just refer to them as 7th chords. They don't say dominant 7th, they don't say flat 7th, they're just referred to as a 7th chord. Even when you see it in the world of written music as a chord symbol, it just simply has a 7 written next to the chord letter. So if someone says, play a 7th chord, you know what kind of chord they're talking about. Next up is the major 7th chord. To create a major 7th chord, you add the major 7th to a triad. This is actually the 7th tone in the key. You don't flat the 7th tone as you do when you're building a dominant 7th chord, because the major seventh is a member of the major scale. Forgive me for using the word scale. The easiest way to build a major seventh chord is to add the tone that is a half step below the root. For example, the major seventh of C major is B. It's the very next key below the root of the triad you're adding it to. The major seventh of D is C sharp. The major seventh of A is G sharp. And just like the dominant seventh chord, you can open up the chord like this. There's a lot of places to play the major seventh. Unlike the dominant seventh chords, major sevenths have a smooth, rounded out sound to them. They're non-dissonant chords. You don't find them as much in blues music, but in popular music, they're everywhere. Last of all, I can almost hear you asking, is there such thing as a minor chord with a major seventh in it? Yes, there is such an animal, but it's not very common. It's actually called a minor major seventh chord. You'll occasionally find this chord in jazz music, but it's not common in popular music at all, and it's a very dissonant chord. Spend some time learning these different seventh chords, and you'll be on your way to sounding like a pro. Well, that's all for now. This is Greg with Bright Idea Music. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and share because it provides feedback and a connection with you guys and gives me the direction to produce tutorials that you need to learn the fastest and easiest way. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.